Imagine you wake up tomorrow, roll over, grab your phone, and your phone is absolutely flooded with messages from people letting you know that your product or your online course was just mentioned on one of the largest podcasts in America, something like Andrew Huberman or of that scale. Could your website handle that much traffic? If you're running WooCommerce, the answer is almost certainly no. That is, unless you're using the sponsor of today's video, Cloudways Autonomous. Now, let me pause for a second here, because if you've ever hosted with Cloudways in the past, this is completely different. You're going to want to stay tuned to this. With traditional cloud-based hosting for WordPress, everything is considered to be vertical. And what I mean by that is you have one instance and it's got CPU power, it's got memory, and as you have people visit your site, those resources are taken up. And as soon as they're exhausted, the site typically starts to slow down first, and then eventually will start to spit out some errors. To be honest, it's a little bit of a guessing game anytime you spin up a new website. You don't know exactly how the server will react to the specific software you have installed, and you don't know exactly how people will act on the site, whether they'll add a lot of items to the cart, or whether they'll be doing checkouts all at the same time, or if it'll be spread out throughout the course of the day. All of these things really matter when sizing a server appropriately, getting enough CPU and getting enough RAM in order to provide a good user experience for the people who are trying to give you their hard-earned money. Now, this has always been a problem for WordPress and WooCommerce. Other people have tried to find solutions for this, but it typically starts at thousands of dollars per month. With Cloudways Autonomous, they are using Kubernetes, which I'll get into what that means a little bit later on, and giving you a horizontally scaled website, meaning that as you have more demands, they can simply replicate your site across more and more containers in order to accommodate more people. So when you get mentioned on Andrew Huberman, it won't bring your site down to the ground. You'll simply be scaling horizontally, adding more resources as necessary. And when the need for those resources go away, they will automatically start to contract. So you're really only going to end up using the stuff that's actually needed. It's a beautiful system. Now, containerization of software and Kubernetes, which manages those containers, is a fairly technical conversation. But if you want to get a great introduction to what Kubernetes is, I'm going to link to a Fireship video down below. It's about 100 seconds long, and it explains Kubernetes better than I ever could. So definitely go check that out just to learn a little bit more about this amazing technology. The good news is Cloudways Autonomous Hosting is dead simple. In fact, it's easier than any other Cloudways hosting I have ever used. So rather than just talk about it, I'm going to go ahead and show you how it works. Now, I'm going to go ahead and sign into my Cloudways account. If you want to follow along with me and deploy your own Cloudways Autonomous website, I've got a link in the description. If you click on that, it helps me out. It lets the Cloudways folks know that videos like this are actually helpful, and then we can go ahead and make more of them together. All right, so let's go ahead and check out Cloudways Autonomous by deploying our very first site. So here is my Cloudways demo account. I'm going to go ahead and add an autonomous application by clicking right here where it says Get Started under Autonomous Apps. To get started with Cloudways Autonomous, I do need a plan. Pricing starts at $35. I'll be digging deeper into the pricing a little bit later on in the video. So if you want to know more about your bang for the buck, definitely hang on until the end. For now, I'm just going to get started with that $35 a month plan. Now, one nice thing is that even though this is a different type of hosting than traditional Cloudways billing, it's still done by the hour. So you can go ahead, spin up a site for 5 hours if you want. It's probably going to cost you $1 or so, not even that. And you'll be able to play around with Cloudways Autonomous, see what it's like, see if it's a good fit for you. And if you like it, you just leave the server up. If you don't like it, just go ahead and cancel your plan, and you won't be charged for anything more than the time that you used. No long-term commitments. I've always appreciated that about Cloudways. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and confirm this plan. And you can see up here that I now have 0 out of 1 autonomous apps because the plan that I chose only came with 1 app. We'll talk more about the pricing later on, but now we need to actually add an app to our plan. So I'll click right here where it says Add Autonomous App, and I'll give it a name. I'll just call it Demo. Next up, I'm going to select my region. I can choose between Frankfurt, London, Singapore, and South Carolina. I'm in the US, so I will choose South Carolina. And then I have the option between WordPress or WordPress with WooCommerce installed. I'm going to opt for the second one here, adding WooCommerce automatically for me. You could always add WooCommerce later if you're wondering. You don't have to lock yourself in, but I'm gonna go ahead and start off like this. All right, let's click Add Application. This is just gonna take a few moments for essentially the application to get set up. And then I can show you how the hosting works and we can log in to see what the website looks like. Now, while I'm waiting for this server to spin up, I wanna point out that at no point was I asked what type of server would I like? How many CPU cores should it have? How much RAM should be available? That's not how autonomous hosting works. It simply keeps your site online and fast for your visitors. You don't have to worry about any of those specs. It's kind of almost too good to be true feeling. Now, I want to be clear that the technology that Cloudways Autonomous is using is far superior to the common shared hosting provider that might also be offering you unlimited everything. We'll look more at the performance metrics a little bit later on in the video, but first let's get into the UI and actually see how you'd manage a site that's being run on Cloudways Autonomous. All right, so my site has spun up and you can see it right here inside of this pretty clean and minimalistic dashboard. We've just got this card here that gives me some analytics about the site, some data that I want to know at a glance. And if I had multiple applications, multiple sites, they would just stack up beneath this existing one right here. Now, there would typically be a thumbnail image over here, but because the site is brand new and it's blank, there's currently a blank photo. I'll also be able to see my usage information over here in terms of disk usage, the number of visits, and the amount of bandwidth that I've consumed. Now, that is important as it relates to Cloudways Autonomous pricing, and I'll explain that to you very shortly. For now, let's actually just get into the server administration section where we can see all of our settings and configuration options. You're going to be shocked at how simple this is if you've ever managed another website on Cloudways or any other cloud hosting provider. First, we've got this overview screen, which we're looking at right now. It gives us options to get into things quickly, like SFTP or SSH. We can add our own custom domain or get our access to the database, giving us all of the credentials we need to actually go in and view the real database, make some changes there. Then we've got some information about the site itself. It's currently running PHP version 8.1. Now, important to note, if you have a plan that allows for multiple websites, you can certainly run different versions of PHP on different websites. It's not set at some kind of global server level or anything like that. Having a solid staging system is critical for most websites, so we can simply add a staging environment right here with a single click. And then down below, we have our resource metrics in terms of visits, bandwidth, and disk space usage. So that is the overview screen, or about 1/4 of the overall interface. It might even be a little bit more than that because like the next screen, there's only 2 options. We've got caching details. There's nothing really even to configure here. Object Cache Pro is installed and activated for you by default. There's nothing you need to do to change it, no settings, it's just taken care of. If you're not familiar with Object Cache Pro, it's typically, I think, about $90 a month. So to get this on a $35 a month server is a great value. All right, I take that back. It's actually $95 a month. Or if you pay for it annually, it comes down to $79 a month. So overall, we get this included with our autonomous hosting, kind of making it seem almost free. Now, the benefit of having Object Cache Pro installed out of the gates is that your WooCommerce site is going to run way more efficiently. All of those add to cart clicks and checkouts are going to run very, very smoothly because Object Cache Pro is optimized for WooCommerce. Okay, so that's Object Cache Pro. It's doing the database caching, but you still need page caching. Now, instead of running it in a plugin on the site, it's actually being handled by Cloudflare Enterprise to be specific. So you get Cloudflare Enterprise doing full page caching as well as offering a CDN. So no matter where people are accessing your website from in the world, it will always be served up very quickly. Let's move over to the third tab, which is Workflows/Tools. When we click here, we're going to see options for backups and restores. So if you want to take a backup on demand, you simply click this button and it will be done for you. Now over to the left here below backups and restore, we have PHP settings. This is where we can set the PHP version that we want to run on our website so that it's compatible with all of our plugins. And we can also configure PHP, set a memory limit, set the max input time, whatever you want to do for PHP. There's no reason to log into anything via SSH. We've got a nice user interface here to configure it. And then finally, we've got our staging management. Remember, there was a link to that right on the overview screen. That was kind of a shortcut just to take you here so that you can actually launch staging. So again, launching staging, super easy. If you're not familiar with the concept of staging, it simply just makes a copy of your website as it is so that you can try out some new things without affecting the experience for visitors to your site. Often I will make changes in staging just to test things out. And then rather than actually copy things back over, I will just make the same changes after I've verified that they worked in the testing environment. It's also great for troubleshooting things like plugin conflicts without having to take every plugin off of the website. So the staging site is now available to me. I've got the URL right here. So I could access this and mess around with any settings that I wanted to try out before actually doing them on my primary site. Or what you can actually do is just copy that entire site over before making those changes. So let me show you. We'll go into the Manage Environment options. And now we've got two options. We can either push the data from the staging site to live. So after you're done making your changes, you'd push it back over to live. I personally don't do this option very often. But what I do find myself doing most often is copying the data from the live site to staging. So if I've got a site that's already functioning pretty well, but I want to test out maybe a new plugin, I would simply copy the data over to the staging site, install that new plugin, see if it has any bad effects. And once I'm sure that everything's good to go, well, then I'll just repeat those steps over on the live site. All right, our last option over here is intelligence. And this is simply logs. Basically, what you're going to get is what's going on the actual website. We've got our access logs, our error logs. There's a traffic analysis as well as a cache analysis, which are not available to me right now as my site was just created. And that's it. That's all of the controls that are necessary because everything else is just handled for you behind the scenes. It's a beautiful thing. If you've managed websites for as long as I have, which is going on, let's see, probably about 16 years at this point that I've been managing websites, not having anything to configure is a really good thing. Well, it's not that you don't have anything to configure, it's just not as much as I'm used to. Now, there's actually two more options over here to the right, but they're essentially where we're going to get our passwords to be able to access our server or log into WordPress. So up here, I have something called View Credentials, and you notice the WordPress logo right next to it. So this is going to give me my admin credentials to log into WordPress so I can actually begin building out my site. Now, I'll do that in a minute, but right below this, I have something called Manage Access. And this is where I can set up things like FTP users if I need to log in that way, maybe to upload some files. Or if I want to connect my own domain name, I would do that right over here. I would simply type in the name of the domain that I want to use, hit add domain, and then it's going to give me some DNS credentials so that I can connect up my custom domain to my website. Once we add our own custom domain name, that's when we get access to the Cloudflare Enterprise features like the CDN, a WAF, a web access firewall, DDoS protection, mobile optimization, full web page caching, and image optimization. The last tab down here is where we get access to our MySQL database. We've got everything you need to be able to connect directly up to that and make any modifications that you want. All right, let's go ahead and log into our website here. We can see what plugins are installed by default. I'm going to copy the username and password, open up the URL, and let's log in. And here we are in the back end of WordPress. Let's head over to the plugins section and see what's installed for us. You can see that it's pretty trim back here. There's Askimit, Breeze, Hello Dolly, as well as WooCommerce. If you go into Breeze, you're going to notice that the cache system is actually off by default because we don't need it. We've got Cloudflare Enterprise. And the theme that's installed by default is 2023. Of course, you can use whatever theme or plugins you want. It's your site. Cloudways does not restrict you on the software that you run. In fact, you can even move over your existing site from another provider. And I'll talk more about why you might want to do that very shortly here. But just so you know, Cloudways will migrate that site over for you for free if it's the first site you've moved to Cloudways. Otherwise, they have a very small fee to do it, or you can do it yourself. So this is a blog post on coder.io where they independently went and they checked the performance of 3 different hosting providers. We've got Cloudways Autonomous, Kinsta, and WP Engine. Now, this blog post is quite detailed and full of nuance, so I'm going to link to it down below. Go ahead and check it out. I won't be able to get into the nitty-gritty of every scenario here, and anytime you're performance testing a host, there's a lot of variables that come into play. It's very hard to emulate the exact experience of having traffic, but I'm going to try to highlight what I believe are the most important points of this blog post. So basically what they did is an e-commerce test, and we're going to see some charts here in a second where we're going to see the bars representing how many checkout completions happened during a certain period of time. So in this first option, it's low concurrency, or 5 users at the same time, 5 concurrent users. Now on this first chart, in my opinion, it's kind of a wash. There's some small differences, but it's not really substantial. So technically, I would say WP Engine kind of won this one. They were able to do a half of a checkout per second, which means that you could check out, one person takes 2 seconds to check out. Not bad, but really not that much better than Kinsta, which did 0.46 add to carts and checkouts per second. So we're talking about 0.03 add to carts per second, hardly even quantifiable, or I guess they would say statistically significant. Cloudways fared the worst in this scenario, but not by much. They got 0.38 add to carts and checkouts per second. Now, this is the worst that Cloudways does. As the test continues, they add more concurrency. Next up, 50 concurrent users. And this is where Cloudways starts to kind of wipe the floor with the competition. So here you can see they're able to do a lot more checkouts and add to carts per second. So the low end of this chart is Kinsta, and they did 0.63 and 0.62 add to carts and checkouts per second. So not a lot when you have 50 concurrent users. WP Engine doing quite a bit better than Kinsta with 2.0 adds to carts and 1.29 checkouts per second. But Cloudways kind of cleans their clock when they do 3.76 add to carts and checkouts per second. So almost twice as much as WP Engine, which was already more than twice as much as Kinsta. And it doesn't stop here. As we go up to 100 concurrent users, Cloudways performance continues to excel. You can see they are doing over 6.0, where their competitors are not even getting to 2 per second. Okay, so this is very clearly impressive performance. So it must be unaffordable, right? Because typically having really nice things costs a lot of money. Well, I think Cloudways has done a pretty decent job of making this available to anyone who could actually benefit from it. All right, I've got the autonomous pricing plans up here, and I'm going to go through them one by one and explain who they're right for and if you even need this service at all. Now, the first thing I would look at is how many websites do you need on autonomous? Because that's going to dictate what plan you want to go with. You can see that plan 1 here has just 1 WordPress website. If you go up to plan 2, then you get 3. Plan 3 gives you 6. Plan 4 gives you 10, so on and so forth. There's actually 7 different plans. But also think critically, do you actually need a website to be on autonomous? If you're not doing e-commerce or an LMS online course system, you don't really need autonomous, in my opinion. A regular traditional VPS on Cloudways is going to serve you just fine. Really, the only websites that are going to benefit from autonomous are those that need that horizontal scaling because there's a lot of checkouts happening at one time, or there's a lot of people enrolling or taking courses all at the same time. Now, if you get a huge rush of traffic over to your blog because let's say you're trending on Twitter or you're on the front page of Reddit, that's not really something that's going to necessitate autonomous because all of that data can just be served up by caching. It's the type of data that needs processing power, like checkouts, like taking online courses that are having quizzes and things like that. That is what actually will benefit from autonomous. So if you're still with me and you say, all right, I need just one website, can I get by with a $35 a month plan? I would say probably, especially to get started. Let's run through some of the numbers here. Okay, $35 a month gets you 1 WordPress website. You, of course, get the staging environment and the backups included. Then you also get 15 gigabytes of disk space, which is not a ton, but it's probably enough to get you going. And as soon as you run out of disk space, it simply adds more and you'll just pay a little bit more. You can see there's some additional usage info down here, where if you need more disk space, it's simply $2 per additional gigabyte. Next up is 30,000 unique visits per month. Now, this might be a little bit unusual to people who are used to traditional cloud hosting solutions that might just give you a bandwidth number per month. And most of us never run into those bandwidth numbers because they're typically pretty high. So why 30,000 visitors per month? It's because of the way autonomous works. We're not paying for a specific CPU and RAM. Instead, we're going to scale to take up as much processing power as we need based on the number of visitors we have. So this is actually true usage-based pricing. If you have a lot more visitors, you'll end up paying more that month, but then it's going to automatically go back down the next month. So as long as you stay under, let's say 30,000 unique visits a month on plan one, it'll all be included in that $35 a month. However, if you have a big month, you get featured on Huberman and you get thousands of extra visitors, well, you'll simply pay $1 per 1,000 additional visitors over 30,000. And very similar for bandwidth, you get 100 gigabytes of bandwidth to start with. And if you need additional, it's simply $1 for 10 more gigabytes. I know this is a different way to think about pricing your website, but to me, it provides some peace of mind because now I know my website's going to be available almost all the time. 99.9 is the service level agreement in terms of uptime. So if something happens software-wise or hardware-wise, it will automatically repair itself and just spill over into a new container. It's the magic of Kubernetes. So that is Cloudways Autonomous. If you want to get started right away, I've got my link in the description, so go ahead and check it out. If you like the video, make sure you click that like button. Make sure you get subscribed if you're not already. My name is Dave Swift. Thank you for watching. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.